Three, two, one.
Hey, what's going on, Metaverse Church friends? So good to be hanging out with you, really for the first time in a long time. In fact, it's been quite a while that it might be fair enough for me to just reintroduce ourselves at this point. If you don't know who I am, my name is Stuart. I go by Stunami in the Metaverse, and hanging out with me is my awesome co-host, Goose. Over at Cornerstone VR. Man, I feel like before we hit record on this, we were talking about how it's been a while, and I feel like you and I don't even know each other at this point. And yet, at the same time, technology was already starting to fail us, and I was like, man, it's almost like it's like we never left. It's like
Right.
we're picking up right where we left off. But
Yeah.
dude, good Goose, it's so good to see you, man.
You
It's
too,
so
man.
good to see you.
Yeah,
Hey,
for
man,
sure. For sure.
You're looking good. Summer treated you well, it looks like.
Summer was all right. It's been busier than I was hoping, but productive. So it's been good. And yeah. What about you? How's the baby?
Oh, baby's good. And dude, you hit the nail right on the head. Many of you guys have reached out on Discord just asking, like, hey, you guys still alive? And Goose and I were even talking about that a little bit too. It's just like, man, this summer ended up being a little bit busier than I think either one of us expected. And, between family vacations that were happening, unexpected family vacations would just happen to us. We got an unexpected opportunity to go see family down in New Mexico to go introduce the newborn to my side of the family and to my wife's dad and that side of the family. So just a lot of traveling that we didn't expect, and just a lot of caring for 3 kids at this time that I knew how to take care of 2. I didn't realize how crazy 3 was going to be. So yeah, man, all that kind of stuff has been going on. So, and obviously those are the things that have kept us from producing an episode in a while, but we're back, and I'm happy to see your face, Goose, and I'm happy to see all of your faces. Oh, I'm not really seeing your faces, but I'm glad that you're listening to us right now. So,
Well, you hit the magic number with kids, because after 3, it's all the same.
I heard that. I heard
Yeah.
once you hit 3, anything if you continue to add on after that is pretty much all the same. And then I've also heard that once you start hitting like those higher numbers, like 4, 5, 6, that kind of stuff, like all of a sudden you're no longer having to care for all 4 or 5, but the older ones start caring for the younger ones. And then the way that I've heard it said is like they start forming their own like little community. And then if you get into like 8, 9 kids, then all of a sudden they start forming like their own little ecosystem where they all just kind of survive and thrive off of each other. So I looked at my wife and I was like, we busted out the 3 thing. And she said, and that's where we'll stop. And I said,
okay,
all right. Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, we had our 3. And that was us. We were done and we stopped. And then eventually now we've got 4. So it turns out it's actually never final.
Yeah. It's never final until it's final, I guess.
So what's been going on with you guys in the metaverse?
Yeah, man. Since it's been a while since we've chit-chatted, I feel like I've been learning a few things, and I've been talking to my team a lot about really even what it is that we do. Been talking to my leadership about it as well. And so we've been looking at just really what it is that we do and asking the question, hey, is this effective? All at the same time, based off of the last episode that you and I did talking about those summertime blues, keeping in mind, like, hey, there is a summertime lull that we need to be aware of right now. So really for us, we've kind of kept trekking with what we have been doing. So we're still in spatial. And I think I mentioned in our last episode that we started investigating and playing with the idea of being back in big screen for the first time in a long time. And we're still doing that. In fact, we have seen decent success in big screen, that we have brought our big screen service not just on Thursdays, but now we're live streaming those services on Sundays as well. So simultaneously, we've got a big screen service at 9 a.m. Central Time, and then we're doing a big screen service and a spatial service at 10:30 a.m. And just kind of getting it out there and just to see what we got, and really kind of see which one's giving us a little bit more traction at this point. Because I think the question that I've been pondering on a lot lately has just been like I love the team that I have, but I also want to utilize their time wisely. And so I've just been asking the question like, hey, where is the best use of Lakeland's time in the virtual reality spaces right now? And so that's really kind of why we started bringing in the big screen to our live stream service timeframes of that Sunday at 9 and 10:30, just to kind of see like, okay, we know what we've been getting in spatial, but what can we get in big screen at this time? And by running one at 9 and running both at 10:30, do we see a difference in attendance and those to the point where, man, come fall, do we do a big screen at 9 and then a spatial at 10:30 because those two are the most attractive in those spaces and at that time?
Yeah.
But I will say Thursdays at 8 p.m. have been off the charts for us in big
that's
screen.
a good time.
So, yeah, for sure. The new thing that I'm doing is I was actually talking to some friends at a previous church that I worked at where they created like this Christianity, like Cornerstones, Christianity 101 Foundations type course that I taught there. I was like, dude, this stuff is killer information. So I just reached out to them as mutual friends and just said, hey, would you guys mind sending me those files? Because I would love to bring this into the VR spaces and just kind of see how well it plays there as well. So starting by the time that this airs this past Thursday, so for us right now, this Thursday coming up, I'm going to be doing a Christianity 101 course in big screen.
Oh, nice.
And just labeling it that, which I think like our friends over at Oasis are doing the same thing. Actually, I think they may have pivoted to alpha at this point, I think is what I've seen, but they were doing the same thing. And I think for me, that's just kind of what I've been seeing with people is they want to get into conversations, even in platforms like big screen. That's like huge on streaming.
Yeah.
They still want that community. They still want conversation. And, just even some of the basics kind of stuff is kind of what people are eating up right now. I'm like, cool, then let's just do this. Like, let's just introduce people to the gospel. Let's just introduce them to the basics and let's start fresh and grow from that point and see if we can't get people into community that way. So that's kind of what's going on with us. We're kind of being really open-handed with a lot of the material that we have. You know, we used to run alpha in AltSpace. We've done it a couple of times in some of the other platforms. And now I'm just talking to a few other people and just saying, hey, we have this material already made. So if you ever want access to it and you want to run it yourself, like, please just ask and here's the access to it so you could run it in virtual reality. So we've been doing a little bit of that. And then I guess the last thing I'll say, just to kind of cap my time talking about everything that's been going on. I would say something that I'm super stoked about is just the amount of churches that are, and church leaders, like Christian leaders that are excited about the opportunity of the metaverse. You know, we had our mutual friend Jeffrey come on to this podcast to talk about the metaverse mission trip that was going to be taking place. So that actually kicked off just a couple of weeks ago. Well, I guess August, yeah. By the time this airs, August 1st. So they've been going strong at that. And there's a few church leaders doing that. And then I'm going to butcher this, but the Global Alliance of Church Multiplication. So this is part of like Crew. They've got a metaverse learning cohort that's taking place here through the month of August on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern to 10:30. And I think the last numbers that I heard, so our first week kicked off this past Wednesday for week 1. So it's happening every Wednesday through the month of August during those time frames. And week 1, we had 35 church leaders hop on just to learn more about how to do ministry in the metaverse. And then we did a check-in call just a couple of days ago, and that number has grown up to 50 already, or 55.
That's
so
amazing.
There are more and more church leaders and churches that are just curious about like, hey, what is the metaverse? What's the church's part in it? How do we get in? And I think the beauty of it all is all 55 of these people and the however many with the metaverse mission trip, their homework assignments is to hop into the metaverse and just try to befriend and share the light of Jesus to people in all the platforms that we've talked about on here: VR chat, big screen, spatial, horizons, all that kind of stuff. So there's more. There are more. There are more workers going in to harvest right now. So it's cool. It's cool. It's really exciting to see. So what about you?
Amazing.
What's going on?
Amazing. That's a great update, man. Yeah, it's interesting because after we did that podcast on the kind of the summer lull. I don't know if we're having quite the lull that I would have expected, and if it's the lull, then man, the fall's going to be amazing. Because things have been really steady actually. VR chat, we've the discussion that we've had, and the numbers, and again, we're not about the numbers, but it's it's undeniable that that's a part of it. It's been pretty packed, and then Horizon Worlds is seeing an uptick as well. And so just from those metrics, last few weeks, last month and a half, it's been really solid. More than just the numbers, just the discussions that we've had. Seeing the demographics that are coming in, and what I mean is the spiritual demographics. The people who are not followers of Christ, or those who are lost or de-churched, or all of that, like seeing those people coming in and having like really meaningful conversations, asking really good questions. It's been amazing. So overall, that's been what what we've been seeing. Still have our life group going in spatial, and then interestingly enough, we have our own group going in big screen that does resonate a bit with what you're talking about, with that kind of Christianity 101. I don't know if I would call it exactly that, but our man Paul, our buddy from Wales, has essentially handcrafted an 8-week course. It's based on some other material, but he kind of molded it into something that's really, really great. And he's been leading that, and that was an invite-only closed group, which we did that by design because we've got kind of a mix of people that we put in there. Some who are very much on the front end of their spiritual walk, and then some others who we know are going to be amazing disciplers, but just kind of needed to get a little bit further down the road. And so we've got that kind of mix in there along with Paul and then a few of our other leaders, and he's been going through that with them. And wow. And so that's been going absolutely fantastic. So that's one nice thing that we've got. We've got kind of like the two services going, and then we've got big screen going and spatial going. And so we've got like kind of a decent spread in terms of the platforms. So that's us. That's kind of what we've got going on. The other two other things, really. One, I'm almost reluctant to say anything about it because I'm a really big fan of Hustle Quietly, although this isn't a secret at all. But we are also developing in VR chat a game, and the idea behind that is to sort of create a spot that anybody might want to go to, Christian or otherwise.
Yep.
And use that as a way to, sort of, bring people in or keep people as well after service, kind of, people will end up, kind of world hopping or looking elsewhere. And so, as we talked about what might keep people there, it was like, hey, well, what if we made a game? I mean, obviously, that will always be my default is let's make a game in all situations. So that wasn't a hard sell for me, but, the other part of that was, could we make something that would be worthy of a Patreon? Because something I know that you and I have discussed, and all church leaders that are in the metaverse have discussed is, hey, how can this go from something that is supported by the church to at least sustaining itself, and then even hopefully one day actually supporting other things.
Yep.
And we're really feeling we're at the point now where we've got to lean into that. For the last whatever is 3 years, we've kind of been okay with the idea of let's just be here, let's learn the culture, let's make let's have relationship. We haven't shied away from giving as a discipline. We certainly haven't pressed it maybe as much as we might in just the normal kind of like established local church. So we're talking about that, but then also in addition to that, what we've talked about is, look, if we had resources to in the physical church, if we had resources to say build a coffee shop and it was economically viable and we had a good plan and we thought it would make sense to not just make money, but to use it as a ministry opportunity in tandem, we would do that. Mm-hmm. And here we have that. It's not a money thing. It's just a time thing. But I'm here. We've got other developers. We've got modelers. We've got the people that can do this. And so we kind of looked around and said, this makes sense. So we're leaning into that as another thing. And that's going to take time, and we're going to keep moving that along. But that's one of the other things that we've sort of broken ground on. And it's there. It's in our world. Like, you can technically go play what I would call prototype plus of it right now.
Yeah.
And so it's not just an idea, like, we're going with it, but there's still a long, long way to go. So that's one thing. And then the other big thing, and I'll end my time with this, is just we have had so much just over the summer. I mean, over the course of our ministry, we've had quite a bit of really great evangelism, but the dial has turned up on that really, really loudly over the summer. So much so that we've actually created an evangelism team. So now we've got our own dedicated metaverse evangelism team, and we're talking about what that looks like. And the reason why that is more complicated than it may seem is because one of the aspects of that we are seeing and that we've got to prepare for is that we are seeing more and more minors in the metaverse. Yep. I don't know if you saw, but I think it was Meta that lowered the age for like the minimum age for the terms of service. And so, but nonetheless, it was 13 before, which is plenty young. But we're just seeing more and more, especially in VR chat. And so the questions have come up: what do we do? Because there is the point of protecting the children. Yep. But then there's also the point of protecting our people, because the last thing anybody needs is a false allegation that somebody said something inappropriate, showed something inappropriate when it didn't happen. And so we want to protect the kids from anything bad happening. We want to protect our people from false allegations and all that. And it's just like the stakes are so high with that. Yep. So more than just an evangelism team, it is an evangelism team in which we have to contemplate the fact that they almost certainly will be encountering minors, and what does that look like from a vetting process, from a due diligence standpoint, in terms of things like background checks and even like fingerprinting, because it's required in the state of California, but not elsewhere. So I'm looking through the legal issues on the lawyer side of it of, what do we have to do just to comply with state law? So anyway, without getting into all the nitty gritty of that is a major part of what we're looking at right now. And, and then the natural question then is, well, if we are preparing our team for evangelizing to youth, what then is stopping us from making it just a full-blown youth ministry? Because if we're going to evangelize to them, in order to actually walk out the Great Commission, we're not called to evangelize the nations, we're called to disciple them. Yep. So it's not just dropping off the gospel to a minor and saying, okay, we're out of here. It's, if they accept Christ, we can't just leave them, So then what do we do? So lots of questions, things that, have come up in the past in terms of what if, more just, thinking about, hey, what happens if this, but now it's actually happening and we're being forced to deal with it. So, so that's where we're at. Maybe, I don't know, that might've been just 2 or 3 between you and I, we might've just had 2 or 3 episode ideas for the future.
I know. Cause like just even the talk of the youth aspect. So I've had a pretty hard stance on this one for a while. So there's been a few different churches that I've spoken to that have had an interest with their church bringing in virtual reality. And in two instances that I can recall, some of the church leaders are like, "Hey, so we're thinking about doing this, but we're wanting to do it for our youth ministry." To which
Yeah.
I said, "You guys, you can. I'm not telling you that you can't, because you can. But what I'm saying is, this is still an open source online, program that you don't know who's on the other side." I said, and they're like, and some of the pushback that I got on that was, well, we'll just create a closed event. You gave Paul as an example with big screen, right? It's great. But still, for even Paul or for a church that's wanting to bring this in for their youth ministry, all it takes is one person who's giving out the room ID or the access key to that event. And then that can open it up to whoever's going in. And again, you don't know who's on the other side of that. So I've always had a pretty hard stance on that. Like, I wouldn't do it, but it doesn't mean that you can't. But here are the reasons why I wouldn't. But now you're bringing up something to me for the very first time that I never really put into consideration, that I'm going to ask Goose to put on that lawyer hat here for a second. So in the things that you've been researching in that, because I agree with you. Like I've seen the uptick of like youth in every single one of the platforms. I didn't know about Meta lowering, or whoever it was, lowering their age requirement, which I agree with you. 13 is still plenty young. And if they went lower than that, to me, that's just pretty gnarly. But the false accusations that could come, like, you're building up this evangelism team, but I'm even thinking from the perspective of Lakeland VR at this point, with more and more youth are hopping into these spaces. What are the potential danger traps of even just us running our basic event, our normal event, and a youth just coming in and then reporting us, either because one, they're trolling, or two, I mean, either way it's trolling, but two, they're just wanting to be, there's another word that I would love to use, but jerks, or frankly, even an adult who is portraying themselves as a minor that then reports a church, which, even as I say this out loud, knowing that this is going to be on the interwebs, that anybody can listen to this, I may have just given them ammunition against the church just by even bringing it up. But so what's the safety net for the church, and what's the reality that could be a thing that we like? What are the danger traps that churches who are looking to get into the metaverse need to be aware of with that?
Yeah, the danger traps aren't terribly different than the ones that exist in the local church. And that is when you have anytime it comes down to he said, she said, you're in big trouble. And so, where I'm at is trying to figure out, I mean, a lot of what I did for my prior church was coming up with our best practices, both to meet the, sort of like legal requirements, but then also the just best practices. So, like on the side of protecting the kids, right? What do? We do background checks, right? Well, background checks don't protect kids. I mean, maybe just for the guy who just has no awareness and is like, yeah, I've got a bunch of priors and I'm still going to try. But by and large, people go undetected. Bad dudes, bad women, they go undetected for many years and they abuse kids. And so the background check doesn't spot that. The background check is so that the church, if something goes sideways, has at least some argument that it did what it was supposed to do. But that's not sufficient. We all know that the best way to protect kids is to implement best practices, to go way above and beyond whatever the legal requirement is, and actually use common sense. So we, the most common one, the universal one, is the 2 adult rule. So no adult should be alone with kids ever. There should always be at least 2 adults with minors. Those two adults cannot be a husband and a wife because they can enable each other and have to be essentially like strangers. All right, so that's every church in the world, in my opinion, but every church in the West ought to have that rule if you have a kids ministry, and most everyone that I've ever seen does. Well, for the metaverse, it's much the same. What we are implementing is, listen, don't go out evangelizing by yourself. Go out with another adult, and don't ever be in a world alone with someone. And if you really want to put, cut a wide margin around danger, don't be alone in a world with anyone that you cannot verify, that yes, I said this, or no, I didn't. We've talked about the possibility of recording, and that brings up all sorts of other, legal issues with consent and all that. Let's not even get into that right now, right? Okay. It's just okay. one issue at a time. But the long and short of it is using common sense, having many people around. That's why our services I'm not worried about, because the worst thing that somebody might do is maybe cherry pick something that somebody says, like that takes it out of context, and that's probably the. But nobody's going to accuse anybody of saying something, because it's just like we had 40 people here, like they but that's and the 2 adult rule helps the adults too. If a kid says this person did this, and it's like, well, you don't have to take my word for it. The other guy was here. Just ask him. And he was here the whole time. I was never alone. And the more, and even still, the accusation is going to be a hassle. Even still, the accusation is painful, and you've got to deal with it. And, but at least you've got some way to rebut that false accusation. And it's happening. I just heard of someone, because we've been discussing this, and someone in our Dream Team meeting said, yeah, this happened to him. This guy, I'm not going to name who it is, but it happened to this guy in this other platform. They were having a dispute. This guy who is above 18 was having, this dispute with some kids under 18, and they just accused him of saying stuff he didn't say.
Yeah.
And he it was a whole thing. He got banned for a bit, and then he came back, and he was able to prove that he didn't say it, but you're not always able to do it. So all that to say, I hear what you're saying though about youth. So there's really 2 ways to think about this. I have talked with churches who have thought about getting their local youth to put headsets on. Like they're basically advocating bring minors into the metaverse as our church members. Now, again, I'm with you. I don't know that I would do that. Hat tip to Seraph, who pointed out to me that the Meta lowered the age from 13 to 11. So, right. Okay. So here's the thing. I will tell you, like, my 8-year-old, I have no problem with her playing VR. All of my kids have VR headsets. My 8-year-old she plays single player games. She plays Job Simulator, right? Like, that's it. My 17-year-old son, he already knows if I ever see him in VR chat, he's going to have a problem. Like, even my 17-year-old son is not allowed in VR chat. Again, that's me. I'm not saying again, no judgment if you got a 17-year-old and you think it's okay, whatever. Like, everybody, you do you. But for me, I know what's in there, and I'm telling him, don't let me find you in there. And he doesn't even care. But that's my position as far as what I see in there. So I think you and I are actually kind of aligned in that way. But the reality is that we as adults are going in, and we are talking with people, and some of them are adults and some of them are minors in the sense of 16 years old. And then some of them are legitimately 11 years old in VR chat. And amazingly, they're responding to the gospel. Like, we've seen it. It's not theoretical anymore. 11-year-olds are giving their lives to Christ. And now we're like, what do we do? We have to do something here. So we're treading carefully and as safely as possible, but we are moving forward with it. So
yeah, that's good. So covering the bases. So I've already tried to recap, even just for me, as I'm thinking for us at Lakeland. So you guys are building an evangelism team, but I'm assuming that part of that instruction to this team is you're always going in groups of two.
That team, part of being on that team is everyone is vetted to interact with minors, and it's not specifically to go seek out minors, but I want every member of that particular team to know that at all times when that team is active, as far as Cornerstone is concerned, again, I can't stop people from just going into the metaverse, right? But as far as they are wearing, I'll use the legal term, as far as they are wearing the indicia of authority of Cornerstone, then they must abide by the rules that we have set, and they must be vetted to be around minors in the sense of we have our own procedure, which is the background check. It is a video training that they go through. It is we are essentially vetting them as if they are going to work in our kids ministry.
Yep.
But that's the requirement to be on that particular team. And then, in addition to that, just like you would if you were going to be working in Kidsmen, that you must go out in at least groups of two, and ideally more than that, but minimum there's got to be 2 adults that go out into the metaverse in order to do evangelism as a part of that team. That's the basic framework right now. I'm sure we'll adjust it and everything, but that's it.
Yeah, dude, I think that's good. And I think every person who's listening to this podcast, if they're looking at bringing their church into the metaverse, I'm going to go on a limb here and say that this might be the most beneficial episode that we've done yet, because of the fact of how many minors are in the VR spaces, in the metaverse space. This hands down might be one of the most beneficial episodes that we've ever done for churches in the metaverse or looking into it. Just because, like, I'm just thinking of even some of our initial beginnings into virtual reality for Lakeland. And, we went off and we bought a whole bunch of headsets and passed it out to our team members. But just listening to you talk about this, and this has always been in the back of my mind, I just didn't think of it through the lens that you do. Of course, you're lawyer, Goose, so you're going to think differently than I do for sure. But basically what you just made me process through is like, man, anytime I hand out a headset to somebody at Lakeland who's going to be taking it home because we'll rent them out, should I be having them fill out a background check before I can let them walk out the door with one of our headsets? And it's always been a best practice of ours. I don't know how well we actually follow this practice, but even from the get-go, and I tell other people, like, dude, if you're going to be doing ministry in the metaverse, make sure you're doing it with somebody else. If Jesus in the real world, thousands of years ago, were sending out his disciples by twos, we should be going into the metaverse by twos. So I just think that's a really good best practice overall. But yeah, man, you've given me some really good stuff that you're causing me to look at what it is that we're doing. And you just created busy work for me, Goose, is really what I'm trying to say. Thanks, man.
Then my mission is accomplished. I didn't think you had enough to do, to be honest. I would just say this. So much of it will seem like overkill, and it will be. But we'll never know all of the ways that doing these best practices has protected someone on either side. Yeah. And the there is always a risk to doing ministry. Where we want to end up is we want to be as wise as we possibly can without hamstringing the ministry. So there is, and this is particularly for me as I navigate the legal issues in church, is always it's hard because as a pastor, I'm just like, let's go Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
It's risk. It's risk. It's risk. And that's like, that's what we are called to. But at the same time, we are working in a particular framework. We're working in the West. We're working with a legal system, working in a particular climate, kind of spiritual and cultural climate and all that. And so we are working within that. And it would be catastrophic to just simply, kind of without wisdom, like that sort of like boldness without wisdom, to go in and just say, no, I'm going to ignore that because, I'm going to go win souls. And then something bad happens. The church suffers because of it. And then all of the ministries suffer because of that. The name is tarnished, not just the name of the church, but the name of Jesus himself. And so there is this kind of balance of like, no, let's go boldly. Let's understand there are risks, but where we can have wisdom and just, be careful in these ways, that actually allows us to be even more bold.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, for sure. Man, good stuff. This is a good first episode back after a long hiatus. So, Goose,
Love it.
I am super appreciative of what you guys are doing and what you're spearheading over there at Cornerstone. And really, like, this is what I want to thank you guys for. And I don't know if this is just a Goose thing or if this is a Cornerstone thing as a whole, but I'm super appreciative of the way that you guys are watching out for the bride of Christ as you guys enter into these spaces. Like, we just hung out with some friends and we were talking about just all the different podcasts and docuseries that we're listening to and watching, that is just, it seems to be attack after attack after attack on the church, from the visual perspective on the surface level, but rightfully so, because there have been some ugly things that have happened within the church, local churches within recent history. And what we were talking about is like, I can watch and listen to stuff and be heartbroken for what's happening within the local context of the church and what's happening to the bride of Christ. And at the same time, it doesn't affect my personal relationship with Jesus because of that. It's personal. Like, I know who my God is. I know who Jesus is. I know the impact that he's had in my life. So what's going on in these local churches, it's heartbreaking. And the church needs to be better and the church needs to do better. But that doesn't impact me personally in my relationship with the Lord. But there does need to be this calling to level up of the church, and to speak louder in the terms of holiness and in the realm of holiness and the standard to which Christ has called us to live to, that outweighs and outshines any of the ugliness. And just, I mean, it's just that remembrance of, and for anybody who's listening, like, don't judge the church in the sense of like, the church is supposed to be made up of holy people. But on this side of eternity, we're still jacked up, we're still broken, we're still learning, and we're still growing. Like, if you walk into a church that looks perfect, then you just jacked it up and made it imperfect just by walking in. And that's really just the understanding for all of us, for Goose, myself, really anybody who calls themselves a follower of Jesus. Like, we're beautiful creations in progress. Well put. And it's not finished until we take our last breath on this side of eternity and breathe our first one in heaven. But all that to say, what I'm appreciative of you, Goose, and what Cornerstone is doing is you guys are protecting the bride as the bride enters into the metaverse. And so thank you for doing that, man. I
appreciate those kind words. That is straight. No credit to me. That's straight from the DNA of our elders, and Pastor Jason himself. And I affirm it, but he is such a good leader in that sense. And that goes for you guys too. I mean, I reciprocate that to you guys too. I mean, I see you guys' heart and the care that you take with it as well. And so we be as careful as we can. And we're not doing it perfect. I mean, we're not without our critics. And, it's like, all right. I don't wake up in the morning and say I want to be a terrible pastor. I'm doing my best. And And I know you guys are too. But yeah, I like that we can talk these things out, and even where we disagree, we can sharpen each other. I mean,
Right.
that is the beautiful thing also about what we see in the metaverse as well. And so, but thank you for the kind words. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Should we call it a wrap?
that's it.
All right. Well, guys, as always, again, this has been a while, so forgive me if I butcher this, but thank you. Thank you for listening and watching the Metaverse Church podcast. If this has been beneficial to you at all in any way, which let's call it for what it is, this was a very beneficial episode to you, to me, to everybody that's going to listen. Please be sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe. Those things help with that crazy little thing called algorithm. Get it out to more people like you that need to hear this. And then we will see you all next week for another episode. Trust me, it'll be next week. This is like the longest closing we've ever done, guys. But we will see you next week for another episode of the Metaverse Church podcast. Till then, be blessed.